All right, guys, the last time we talked simplicity, we talked about recipe design. Now, this time we're going to talk about water treatment, specifically water treatment for a single IPA. Water treatment is a very complex, scary, convoluted topic that if you overthink and overutilize, you are far more likely to do damage to your beer than to make it better by doing nothing at all. That's the point of this video, water treatment. So let's go back to the recipe video. If you haven't seen it, definitely watch it. We've made a beer with just 2-row and just hops. That's it. Base malt plus hops. Now comes time for water treatment, but I need you to first brew that base malt plus hops beer without water treatment so you can see what happens. All right? We've done that. We're back. We have a beer that's a little bit too sweet. It didn't have enough punch on the finish. Now we're going to bring in water treatment. There's 2 minerals that you should use when we talk about water treatment, brewing salts, generally for pale hoppy beer. We're thinking about chloride and we're thinking about calcium sulfate, CaSO4 and CaCl. 2 very, very simple salts that are readily available everywhere. Now, I should say, if you're taking this advice, you should be starting with reasonably soft water. If you don't have reasonably soft water, make it or get it. It might be hard, but you need it for this advice to make sense. And I think that you should not be brewing with water that's naturally hard as a starting point. You're going to be fighting an uphill battle. So we made the single IPA very simply. We thought it was too sweet. We know from reading our textbooks that gypsum will create the perception of bitterness and dryness in a beer, and that calcium chloride will increase the body and the perception of sweetness. The second time we brew this beer, the only thing we're going to do is add 75 parts per million of gypsum and then brew that batch again. Iterative improvement. There's no substitute for making the reps for yourself so that you understand. It's the only way to become a better brewer. It's how I made myself a better brewer. It's how all of this that I'm standing in is a possibility. You have to make simple, iterative improvements to your beer, and you will always be better off for it. Now let's use a second hypothetical. We brewed that beer once. Simple malt, simple hop. It's too dry. It's too bitter. Did we add sulfate the first time? If the answer is yes, take it out. Don't use it again. If we didn't add sulfate, that might be a mash issue. We might have to mash higher. The long and the short of it is, you don't want to add too much salt and too many variables at one time because you won't even know what's happening. If you say, boy, I read that gypsum does this and I read that calcium chloride does that, and you add a whole bunch of both to a recipe that has 8 base malts, you're going to have no idea what's happening with your beer. You have to have a template to which you iterate upon and build upon. So very simply, if you want your beer to be a little bit more bitter or have a greater perception of dryness, add a little bit of gypsum. Not 200 parts per million, not 300 parts per million, 50, 75 parts per million with each successive batch until you find the balance that you want. In conjunction with that, you can add calcium chloride. You want to add sweetness, you want to add body, add a little bit of calcium chloride. But beware, when you hit 150 parts per million, chances are that you're going to start to get minerality in your beer. And if you're not careful, minerality can start to take on all sorts of effects in conjunction with terpenes from hops that make the beer taste way worse. So literally, I'm begging you that when you're making your next beer recipe, keep your base recipe simple. And if you want to make salt adjustments, make them very, very small and make sure you understand the outcome before you make any additional changes. It means you have to brew a lot, and it means you have to iterate a lot. But until you do that and you train your palate, you're not going to understand what you're even doing, despite reading every book you could possibly read about water. All right, so that's my commentary on water treatment. I know it's very basic. It's very narrow in scope. You might want to throw something at the TV and tell me I'm wrong, but the proof is in the pudding. I want to thank you guys for watching. Hit that subscribe button. We'll see you next time.